Welcome to the 30/30 Health Podcast. The following discussion is for education and entertainment. It is not intended to diagnose or treat disease. Please do not apply any of this information without first discussing it with your doctor. Here is your host, Guillermo Ruiz.
Hello everyone, my guest today is Steph Gaudreau. Steph combines a formal education in biology and human physiology, 12 years of science teaching experience, holistic nutrition training, and an unabashed love of tasty paleo food. On her blog, Stupid Easy Paleo, Steph launched Stupid Easy Paleo in 2011, and it has become an award-winning and most loved resource in the paleo community for recipes and information. Steph's down-to-earth approach and no-nonsense teaching style shine through in her posts. She also hosts the chart-topping podcast Hard to Kill Radio, where she talks all things fitness, nutrition, and mindset with a focus on how to build unbreakable humans. And she's the creator of the wildly popular Women's Strength Summit. Steph's mission is to provide the most kick-ass inspirational strategies for building a stronger body, mind, and spirit. Thank you for listening, and if you enjoyed my interviews, please subscribe to my podcast, share it with your friends and family, and don't forget to stop by my website, 3030strong.com. So super excited about today's interview with Steph Gaudreau. I just want to get into the super interview we're about to have. So Steph, how did you get started into this craziness that is paleo?
Oh, I'll try to give you a slightly condensed version because it ends up being a long story if I tell the whole thing from start to finish.
And you know what? Most of the people listening probably know your story, but we have like two silos. We have the naturopathic medicine silo that maybe they're not familiar with the paleo. And then we have the paleo community, and I'm trying to bring everyone together. So let's catch everyone up.
I love it. So growing up as a kid, I mean, I had a pretty typical upbringing. I grew up in the Northeast, and I played sports, and I really loved school. And there was sort of, as a kid, I was never like a super sick kid, but I had a bunch of stuff I didn't feel good a lot. And so, I mean, I know that there are a lot of kids who have serious illnesses and they're hospitalized and, that's a huge event for them. But I never had anything like that, but I just sort of always had this underlying feeling that I didn't feel good in my body. But then I went to college and studied biology, human physiology, and got a degree in that and decided to become a high school science teacher. I did high school teaching for 12 years before I eventually left the field in 2013. And so that was sort of like my professional trajectory. But in that time when I was teaching, especially toward the end of my teaching career, I started to feel like I wanted to do something different. And in 2010, as it was actually late 2009, around the holidays, which is never a time that people want to start a new diet. They're always like, we'll just wait till January. But a friend of mine told me about this diet called the Paleo diet. And I was at the time racing mountain bikes. And when I picked up a copy of the Paleo Diet for Athletes by Dr. Cordain and Joe Friel, I recognized Joe Friel's name because he's very big in the endurance sports community. So I thought, oh, okay, what's this? This is interesting. And I really had no idea, I was like, I don't really know what it is. I kind of heard of gluten-free a little bit at that point, but it doesn't seem that long ago, but in 2009, things were very different than they are now. So, I decided I would give it a shot. And 2 or 3 months later, I started to feel very different in my body. And for the first time, my energy levels were sort of stable throughout the day. I used to, I always tell the story, I used to leave work, so teaching, I would leave the classroom. On my way home, I would stop at 7-Eleven and I would get Coke Zero and M&Ms because I just needed a sugar and caffeine boost every afternoon. Because I would fall asleep feel drowsy while I was driving home at 3 o'clock, which is, totally not how we're supposed to feel. But over time, I had sort of normalized these things about my body and sort of how I felt. So my digestion started to get better. My energy levels were getting better. I started to feel like I was sleeping better. I had a lot of acne as an adult. My acne started to clear up. So I thought, all right, well, maybe there's something to this. And I just, I would cook. I've always loved to cook. And after about 1.5 years of this, a friend of mine said, well, I had a personal blog where I would share my mountain bike adventures. And a friend said, you should start a food blog. And I was like, okay, I guess so. I mean, it sounds like fun. And so that's how Stupid Easy Paleo really started. Somebody suggested it to me. So I can never remember to this day who it was, but I owe whoever that was a debt of gratitude because I don't know if I ever would have started Stupid Easy Paleo.
How many people are following your Stupid Easy Paleo blog?
Oh man, social media wise, a couple 100,000 here and there. We get about 500,000 blog views a month. I mean, it's crazy. It's grown into this giant thing. But when I started it in late 2011, it was just for fun. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know anything about being a blogger. My photography was pretty terrible. And I just continued to share everything. And slowly it started to grow. Around the same time, in the fall of 2011, I sort of had this realization that I really did want to leave the classroom, but I didn't know what I was going to do. I mean, I was 12 years vested in my teaching career. I had a master's degree in education. So, all the outside voices are like, but you spent so much money on this and you've invested so much time in this and, leaving, that would be really risky. And as a science teacher in California, I was dual credentialed in biology and chemistry. So being able to teach a physical science, it was a lot easier to get a physical science job than it would be a biology job at the time. So all of these things were happening, and Stupid Easy Paleo was kind of an embryo. It was just like this tiny little thing. And so I never thought, okay, well, I'm going to just quit my job and make Stupid Easy Paleo my full-time job. It just wasn't even a thing. But over the next year and a half or so, as it started to grow and people started to share and people would ask me, how can I do this paleo thing? I want to change my diet. And I started to help more and more people. I thought, well, maybe I could do this. And so I went and did some more education and sort of got my ducks in a row and did all my planning. And I set a date at the end of the school year in June of 2013, I would go on a leave of absence. First, I had to ask for one, and they had to say yes or no. And they said yes, which was nice. But immediately, I had no income and no benefits, and I was sort of cut off for a year. But I was given the opportunity to go and try it, and then if I wanted to come back, I could. So I didn't have to make that really super duper duper scary risk or leap of just quitting outright. But I had that year, and that's how I started working on Stupid Easy Paleo full time. And here we are, 4 years later.
It's insanity, but it's not like you don't have a little bit of risk tolerance, because what type of bike riding were you doing?
I used to race downhill bikes. I mean, I like me some adrenaline now and then.
So you're not faint of heart,
It depends what it is. I feel like some things when it comes to finances and money, and I think that's a story I've been working on in the last year or two, just how I grew up and how my parents and my family talked about money, and I think a lot of people have a similar experience. But when it sort of comes to financial things, I'm a bit more conservative and like, what would happen? When it comes to, putting myself on a 25-pound metal bike and like hurtling down a hill, then hey, I guess that's okay.
Quick shout out to my sister, who is a teacher in the public school system. And, you guys teachers, amazing. And you're still teaching, so it's not like all your years of training went down the drain.
Absolutely. I still feel like, I'm part coach, part teacher is sort of how I describe what I do. And I love helping people to acquire, not just acquire knowledge, but really make it work in their lives and try things out and feel like they're supported.
You wrote a very powerful blog post on body shaming. Okay.
Yeah.
And it went viral. Self magazine actually I want to say retweeted it. I don't think there's a social media term for it. So what made you write this article? And I'm going to include a link to this article in the show notes.
Yeah. Before the show we were talking, and I mentioned I've written on Stupid Easy Paleo alone, I think around 650 blog posts at this point. And I've written a lot of things from the heart, or a lot of things that were sort of about a little bit more than just, well, here's what you do with healthy fats, and here's, these are what macros are, and, here's some recipes. Like, I've written quite a few pieces that sort of spoke about other issues, but for some reason, this really resonated with a lot of people. So on social media on Saturday, I can't believe it's not even been a week, because it's all happened very quickly. But I posted a picture on Instagram of me sort of hanging from a pull-up bar in our gym. And the caption was something like, strength is, you get to define what strength means to you. It was meant to be sort of a very open-ended, uplifting type of post where it's like, hey, you know what? If you like to do different things than me, that's totally fine. I don't think, everybody on the planet has to do weightlifting or whatever to be happy and healthy. Like do what you love is sort of what the message was. And I got a lot of very positive comments, but then I also got a negative comment about my body and, the fact that saying I'm overweight and I have cellulite and I'm not attractive and I look like a guy. And if I try to lift weights to be equal with men, that's never going to happen. In this one comment were a lot of negative things. And normally with comments like this, I just delete the comment and block the person. I mean, I don't have time to engage in battles online with people who are trolling me or try to convince them that they're wrong. And in a lot of ways, this was this person's opinion. And the older I've gotten, the more I realize, hey, I can have a different opinion from you and we can still be civil to each other. Just because we don't agree doesn't mean that we can't be friends. But I thought about my own sort of journey. And so I mentioned I was an athlete and I've sort of always been into sports and stuff like that. But along the way, I battled quite a bit with body image and body dysmorphia. And I was at the height of that, when I was doing my endurance training, I was really using hours and hours and hours a week on the bike to try to make my body smaller. And I was obsessed with this idea of just getting as small as I could. And, if you've seen pictures of me, I'm not a skinny girl. It's just my body type. My body type has always been sort of this way. Even when I was a little kid, I see pictures of me and I'm like, I was kind of a sturdy kid, When this Instagram post happened, I thought about the journey that I've been on over the last 7 years. And yes, now I have better energy and my body feels good, but my mind is so much more free than it used to be when it came to, I don't obsess about my body anymore. I don't obsess about exercise. I like to exercise. I like to lift weights. I like to do jujitsu. Like, I like to move my body, but it's not about trying to make my body fit any specific mold right now. It's like, what can I do with this body? How strong can I be? How good can I feel? And so I thought about 7 years ago or 10 years ago when I was really struggling with this stuff. And if I had read that comment 7 years ago, it would have absolutely crushed me. And I know there are many women and men, girls and boys, who have had these comments said to them, and it's absolutely hurt them to the core. And so in a way, I felt like, I didn't want to reply just to get back at the person. It's not about that. It's about like, hey, whoa, can we dissect this a little bit and break it down layer by layer as to why this kind of talk is so pervasive and is hurtful and is, what can we do about it? And so it was really, so I sat down, it was just an hour or two after the Instagram post went up, and I just started writing on my blog. And it turned out to be, pretty much a personal just expression of what I feel about these things. And an admission as well, as I am not immune to these things like thinking and talking about other people's bodies, or part of it as a health coach, like there's a fine line there too. Sometimes I just wrote this blog post and shared it from my heart and published it that night, and then the next day started just put it up on Facebook and stuff like that, and people started sharing it like crazy. And then Self Magazine, actually an editor, emailed me Monday morning and said, can we syndicate this and rerun it on the website? And I was like, yeah, that's great. So that's sort of how it happened. And my sole purpose and just sort of why I'm happy about all of this is, people are like, it's a great personal accomplishment. Like, are you happy? You got notoriety. I'm like, it's not about me, right? This stuff is going on in the paleo community. It's going on in the ancestral health community. It's a global thing. This is, people everywhere are dealing with these issues. And can we just start talking about it? Can we start peeling back the layers of what is going on here? Because we have layers of sort of self and self-awareness. We have layers of, social media and the internet being what it is, and the anonymity of
being behind the keyboard.
Yeah, keyboard warriors. And why are we having these sorts of interactions? right? We have less face-to-face social interaction. Therefore, our guard is down. My husband always likes to joke, if you were in a bar and you were giving somebody the side eye and then you went out into a parking lot and you exchanged words, you might get punched in the face.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't happen when you're behind a computer.
You get a dislike or a block.
Yeah, or you get to say what you're going to say and run away and nothing happens.
And then people laugh, and now you're getting encouragement from others.
Yeah, or like words are just words, and that has come up a lot. Or the old sort of childhood thing: sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. And I'm like, I beg to differ, because yes, it starts with us as individuals. It starts with me and my word and what I choose to say in the world and how I interact with people. But words can be extremely hurtful, especially if you're in that vulnerable state where you just can't see outside of your own body dysmorphia. You can't see outside of your own depression. You can't see outside of your own struggle. And who's speaking for those people, right? That's why we need strong advocates. And then there's another layer to it all, especially when it comes to women, of sort of internalized misogyny and our expectations and our double standards on women. It's like, you can't try too hard, but you need to try a little bit. In other words, if you don't wear makeup and sort of put on a face, then what's wrong with you? You're not trying enough. But don't put on too much makeup and don't try too hard, right? So be toned, but not too muscular. We have all of these things, especially when it comes to women, where it's just like, wow, the double standards are so huge. And a lot of it is, I will say, perpetrated by females on other females. It's not all, but, I sort of ended it with talking about why do I lift weights? And I think that was the part that I really took the most personal offense to. I was like, I don't lift weights to try to be like a guy. I've done lots of sports. I played soccer, I ran track, I did Taekwondo when I was in high school. I've done mountain bikes, CrossFit, weightlifting, jiu-jitsu now. Like, why do I do these things? Because if they give me something back. It's not about trying to be like a guy or compete with someone else. The barbell in a lot of ways has given me my life back, and in lifting weights and strength training. And that's been my experience. I know it's not like that for everybody, but I think ultimately we have to find the pursuits that give us that stuff back in our lives. It helps us to, for me, lifting weights helps me to focus. It helps me to, there's something very primal about lifting things up and putting them down. I just love how it feels. Like I challenge myself, right? There are so many different aspects of that really resonate in my life. And so I think, when I sat down and I just wrote this post, I was sort of just typing things out, but I don't know, it seemed to touch a lot of people. And I've heard from a lot of moms, especially, who have shared this with their kids. And to me, that is a huge, I used to be a teacher, so I saw this stuff all the time, and granted at a slightly older age than, I wasn't teaching elementary or anything, but, the fact, if this can cause a conversation between a mom and a kid, or one mom that I heard from said, I'm going to print this out and take it to my daughter's soccer team. I want them to read this. Because the girls on that high school soccer team, it's prom time, right? And they're getting teased because, they have muscular legs because they're running around the soccer field, and how they can't fit into some of the dresses. And I just thought, oh my gosh, like this, here we go. There's still work to do. And so if somebody's going to share this with somebody in their life, that's amazing. And we need to have these conversations, even though they're uncomfortable or we don't have the answers. And to realize that we might be doing some of this to ourselves. We might be negative self-talking ourselves, body shaming ourselves. It's very common. And it's not to beat ourselves up, but it's just to say, wow, where's this coming from? Get curious, ask questions, just be aware. It takes time to unravel it.
And you're not by accepting these things, you're not being weak. We are affected by these thoughts. And one of the greatest things is, how you reframe, how much do I weigh, like that goal to how strong can I be? And that, because being strong and being harder to kill is so much more important than the effect of gravity on you on a scale. That doesn't mean anything, but being able to, if your husband, collapses, being able to drag him out of danger, that's important. That is actually something that is important.
For sure. And strength isn't just physical, right? It's mental strength, it's emotional strength, it's spirituality, it's resilience, it's connecting to a higher purpose. It's so many things. You know, a lot of people think, well, I don't like to lift weights, Steph. And I'm like, that's okay. Like, you can develop your strength in so many aspects in a way that suits your preferences and your life. You just have to be willing to try things and trial and error and explore and get outside that comfort zone that's maybe keeping you from trying new things. Like, that's where you really start to create this life that you really love, because it speaks to everything that's important to you and your values.
And that's when when people start noticing you. Once you have a purpose, that's when you start growing. When you are touching people with education or with your persona, that's when people start noticing you. And unfortunately, that's when people start attacking you too.
Yeah, it is.
This blog post and all the blog posts that you've written, you are still a teacher. You're teaching a lot of people. But earlier in the interview, you said, I'm a coach and a teacher. What's the difference?
Yeah, this might sort of strike you as, because you understand this, but when I was learning to be a teacher, and sort of in my first couple years, one of the most important things that I heard that sort of really resonated with me was this idea of, like, you can give someone knowledge, you can teach someone something, or you can help them learn. And there's a difference there. And maybe for some people, the difference is just semantics, but it's sort of like this idea of an empty vessel. You've got a vase and you're going to fill it with water. Okay, so we've got an empty mind and we're going to fill it with knowledge, as opposed to something like you take the kindling that's within someone and you provide the spark or the match to light their own interests and their own desires and their own goals and whatever it is. So there's kind of a difference between the two. And yes, we all need technical knowledge to operate the world. Anything from how to brush our teeth, to drive a car, to lift weights, to cook a meal. Like, there's technical knowledge involved in that. And so we have to be taught those things very explicitly at some point, in our lives. But for me as a coach, it's more than just dumping knowledge into somebody's head, right? It's really helping them it's really providing them with tools, providing them with guidance, providing them with some structure, giving them a shoulder to lean on or a kick in the butt, whatever they need in that moment, and considering the individual. For most of us, if we learn how to brush our teeth, we all brush our teeth the same way. But if you have a goal and I'm trying to coach you and help you get to that goal, we might take 10 different directions depending on so many different factors. So I hear from a lot of people who are like, Steph, I just want to lose weight. They'll actually sometimes look at emails that are sort of like it seems like a dating profile. It's like, these are the foods I like. This is my height and weight. What's not working? And that's a huge question, right? So if I'm going to help somebody get to that goal, I mean, we need to get in deep. I need to know a lot about you. I need to know how I'm going to be able to help you and coach you along through that process. Same thing, I coach weightlifting at the gym. I mean, there is a technical way to do a snatch or a clean and jerk, right? However, every person has slightly different levers. They've got different physical strengths and weaknesses that we need to work on. They may want to compete or not. And so how we coach that person is going to differ.
What do you mean by levers for our people that are not familiar?
Yeah. Sort of limb length and torso length and stuff like that. In the sport of Olympic weightlifting, it really pays to have short arms compared to your torso. So there are places in the world where they line kids up and they have them put their arms over their heads. And if the crook of their elbow is shorter than the top of their head, they're considered to be a good candidate for weightlifting.
So Michael Phelps is not a good Olympic lifter.
No, he probably, he does some in his training, but he's probably never going to be an elite weightlifter.
He should swim.
Yeah, he's got that huge wingspan. He should definitely take up swimming. But yeah, so there's just different ways that people will move the bar and pull the bar off the ground depending on the length of their femur, or maybe they have really long tibia or something like that. So, but everybody's a little bit different. So it's very interesting in the world of health and wellness and fitness. We have all these sort of memes or just ways of explaining things very, very quickly and easily, or like eat real food. And then, but somebody's going to go, but wait, what about this scenario? What about, these heuristics that we use to teach and explain things? And the devil's in the details, right? So if you consider sort of the heuristic as me just dumping knowledge out there into the world, that's the teaching. The coaching comes with the individual and saying, like my husband, you have a histamine intolerance. Okay, well, you can't just necessarily eat everything that's on a real food diet. So how are we going to coach you to that point? Or for me, when I started weightlifting, I had very strong quads and very strong sort of anterior body from cycling for so many years. My posterior chain was not strong. So instead of just high bar back squatting, we did some low bar back squat because that helps you to build your posterior chain strength. So again, like there's always a nuance there, right? And so that's where I think the coaching part comes in.
Rob Wolf says, he says if you are going to come in and his new book, if you just want to do the how to, you get to ask no questions. You just follow this, and it's wide enough that it's going to catch 90% of the population, but still there's going to be 10% that is going to need little tweaks in order to achieve perfect health.
Absolutely. And I think, if we just did the big stuff, most people, we just, ate more veggies, ate a little bit more protein, got more sleep, moved our body a few times a week, got some sunshine. Like if we did the basic stuff, I think we would get most people pretty far toward that goal. But we always want to believe that there's just like, we're not doing the big stuff, and we're just hyper focused on the little nitty gritty details. And it's not going to get us quite as far, I think, than we think it is.
Yeah, I hate the question, what should I eat to lose weight? That makes no sense. What can I add into my current diet in order to make the scale move backwards? Like the question is should be, what should I avoid to lose weight? But, people, the semantics of it, go over our heads. But you are doing some education in the form of seminars and summits to help people navigate the minutia and actually getting to the big. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, when I started this journey in 2009 at the time. And so I did the holidays. You just go out with a bang, do the holidays up good. And January came around and I said, okay, January 10th, 2010, that was my day. And I still remember that day. And I just, took a trash bag and cleaned out my fridge and cleaned out my pantry. And I liked to cook. So for me, the idea of trying something new and cooking these new things is very interesting. But there were only, at the time, I think 2 or 3 cookbooks. The very first cookbook I got was Paleo Comfort Foods, Charles and Julie Mayfield. And there wasn't a lot to choose from. And so a lot of what I did at that time was just search around, try to find things. It was way harder than it is now. You couldn't really go into a Barnes and Noble and see 50 different types of paleo cookbooks, It was harder to find people, people's blogs weren't these huge, awesome websites that they are now. And so a lot of the people that I ended up finding in my journey that helped me to better health were just folks I stumbled on by accident. And this journey is still ongoing, right? Yeah. It's always a process, always an evolution. But as time has gone on, and I thought back to sort of when I was teaching, it was interesting. I'm sure when you and I grew up around the same time, if we went to the library to get a book to do a report and the book wasn't there, well, we were pretty much out of luck. And nowadays, so you would think, okay, well, if students have so much information nowadays, it should be so much easier to turn in projects and reports and labs and stuff like that. Well, we have an information overload now. It's never been more confusing to sort through. We don't teach media literacy very well to students. We don't teach internet literacy. We don't, so we don't have a lot of these skills quite developed yet to teach people how to sort through massive amounts of information and find what's going to work for them. And in a lot of ways, it works to their detriment. I'll often hear from people and they're like, I follow, they'll give me the top 20 people in paleo, or they'll give me 50 people that they follow, and they're like, but I'm so confused because he says this and she says that, and what should I eat higher carb or lower carb, and blah 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 and blah blah blah, and they get they get paralyzed with this over analysis. And so my first thing is whittle it down to 3 to 5 people that you follow for the most part, that their work resonates with you, it's going to help you out in your life, blah blah blah. But that's really what we're dealing with, is this information overload. And so I sort of thought about my own journey and all these people that I kind of found by accident. And a lot of what I've been working on lately is, can I take all the stuff that's out there and filter it down through different lenses? For example, one of them is my Harder to Kill challenge. Like, I want to filter this stuff through the Harder to Kill challenge lens and teach people how to nourish their bodies, strengthen their bodies, renew their energy, and deal with their mindset. Or the lens of the Women's Strength Summit. So specifically helping women navigate toward a kind of like a general philosophy about health and wellness and what this means, and it's multifaceted, but without them having to sift through literally, if you type in body fat into Google and you get 9 million hits or something like that, who are the women or the experts or the people out in the world they have integrity in what they do. First of all, that's very important to me. They are really doing good things to help their communities. They have sound technical knowledge, right? They're the whole package. So can I collect either the people or the strategies that are really going to help without having to go through the information overload? And so that's really been what I've been trying to do in the last couple of years, at least, is help people deal with the fact that we don't need more information. We just need better ways to consume it. And then, of course, we have to act on that information once we get it.
Yeah, I got into weightlifting through Rippito. Starting Strength. Such a great book,
Yeah.
But I can imagine some people getting offended reading the strength is the most important thing in your life. Because, I like to joke around with that, with my tongue firmly planted on my cheek, that, I say, oh, strength is the most important thing. And then people say, what about love? No, strength is more important. And but I can imagine someone that is, maybe will not connect to Rippito. He's a wealth of knowledge, but they might need a softer touch or a different approach to weightlifting than, something that Rippito is going to give you. You have one of these summits coming up. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I do. Yeah, I'd love to. Lately I've been starting out and sort of prefacing my talk about summits with the fact that a lot of summits out there online are not very good. And I know a lot of people are like, oh no,
another summit.
Oh, it's like
I want to get bombarded
stuff
with spam.
Yeah. And, when I first set out to create the first Women's Strength Summit, which happened last year, so this is the second annual, and my goal is to probably do it every year for at least the near term. But when I set out to do this summit, I said, okay, I'm going to do this differently than most of the summits that I've ever seen or I've ever watched or I've ever been, marketed to about. That was really important to me, was like, okay, first of all, we're not going to just bring on an expert and give people 5 minutes of value and then just pitch them for something else, we're going to sit down, we're going to have a conversation, and it's going to be the expert coming on almost like a coaching session. Like if you were going to sit down for an hour and you were like, I want to hear what this person's all about and what they're going to help me solve in my life and what their best teaching and coaching is, like that was the goal. And so I sort of sat down and I thought, well, I'm a woman. When I look at summits out there, especially if there's summits that are marketed to women, I don't see a lot of other women. The fitness world is probably the biggest perpetrator of this. You'll see a summit, whether it's an in-person conference or online, and there are precious few females who are generally represented in those events. Whatever, the organizers have their own, they're playing by their rules, I play by mine. And so I thought I want to create a summit that's completely made by women for other women. And I've been saying this too. I have male coaches in my life, and they're incredibly wonderful and caring and have amazing technical knowledge and have been a very important part of my life. But they're never going to know exactly what it's like to be a woman. And so I want to put that out there because I think people feel like, oh, well, this is very exclusive, or like, don't you think there are guys out there who are worthy of being the experts on your summit? Absolutely. There are so many amazing men doing things out in the world, but they always get a seat at the table.
Yeah.
And so that's why I created the event, because I really wanted to give women a chance to learn from some of the amazing women that have changed my life personally. For example, last year on the summit, I had Dawn Fletcher, who runs a website called Mentality WOD, and Dawn has been my coach. I mentioned earlier when I first started Stupid Easy Paleo, and I sort of had this moment where I figured out that teaching wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do. It was Dawn's coaching that I was doing that actually helped me figure out that my career was a really low area of satisfaction in my life. So a lot of these women they're people who have coached me, who I've learned from, who inspire me, and are doing amazing things out in the world. And some of them are not very well known. And when I think about that, I'm like, but no, the world needs to know about you because you're doing such great things. And so I decided to pull together female speakers who are a variety of different experts and coaches and doctors and have different areas of expertise, and bring them together in an online format that anyone around the world can watch. Because, we all go to in-person events, but for a lot of people, it's not possible, or travel is too expensive. And so that's the Women's Strength Summit. And so the goal is, can we present these very amazing coaching sessions that help women look at strength in many different areas of their lives? It's not just about lifting weights. So a lot of times people will think, okay, I'm going to go to this online thing and Steph's going to try to convert me to CrossFit or Paleo, and I don't want to do that stuff. And it's not like that at all. So we have women talking about all sorts of issues regarding 6 themes this year. And so the themes are, and I'm going to count on my fingers so I don't miss one: mindset, movement, nourishment. So notice it's just not called paleo, it's called nourishment. Women's health. So we have a really cool Women's Health Day that sort of takes us from birth and postpartum through menopause, which is cool. Empowerment and tribe. And I've done 2 informal surveys. I did one on my the event Facebook page and one on my email list. And I asked women, which ones are you most excited about? And I think the top 2 right now are empowerment and tribe, which is really cool. A lot of women have replied back, and they're like, I'm a little bit further along in my journey. I feel like I've got the nutrition and like the movement piece down pretty well, but I struggle to find other women or other people in my life who have similar values, right? Or mindset, like I keep sabotaging myself and stuff like that. So it's interesting, you'd think everybody wants to just learn how to get 6-pack abs, and that's not what we're presenting here, and it's not what the women who are coming to this event are really looking for. They want to go deeper into these topics that there's just not a lot of people talking about it.
I'm going to steal this from Allison Crystal. You're fully credited with coming up with this. So she says that in our society, we see health as different circles. So imagine a circle for like physiology, a circle for nutrition, and then there's a circle for tribe, spirituality, connection, and where all those circles intersect in the middle, that's health. And, in medicine, we tend to focus a lot on the physiology. I'm going to medical school and, we are trying to affect physiology, try to bring you back to health. In paleo or whatever you want to call it, we focus on nutrition, and there's some physiology overlap. But in order to have true perfect health, we got to focus on all of this. And it seems to me that you really, really hit all of those points.
Thanks. Yeah. When I sat down in 2015 to plan the first summit, I wanted to call it the Women's Strength Training Summit, because I was in this group on Facebook and everyone was like, you need to niche down, you need to get more specific. And so I thought, okay, strength training, like I get that. I coach strength training. I do strength training. It's kind of in my wheelhouse. And so I had to sort of plan it out and like brainstorm topics. And the more I sat down and thought about it, I could not get away from the fact that if I want to help a woman if I want to help her strength train, what about issues that come up like, now my body's changing and I'm gaining muscle and I'm having a hard time sort of accepting my body, even though I know I'm getting stronger, I look different. So the more I thought about it, I just couldn't get away from the fact that we're all whole human beings. And you're right, we love to compartmentalize. And I think this is where this idea of sort of these different overlapping things is really important, is that, yeah, it's great. Like food is a really easy gateway to health because we all eat.
Multiple times a day, some of us.
And food can be fun, and it's cultural, and it's social, and we get it. It's familiar, but it can't be the only way, because if we're only optimally sort of optimizing the nutrition part and forsaking the rest, and it's not to say that the food's not an entry point, which for some people it is. They're like, if you're interested, look up Keystone Habits and Charles Duhigg and the Power of Habit and all that stuff. But if we start down that path, then naturally it'll tend to open up. But keeping in mind that even if we optimize our protein, fat, and carbohydrate intake in a particular day, health is so much more than that. And I think we tend to get hyper focused in this community. We have some amazing experts who are so knowledgeable in these very niche topics, these very narrow things. And I think the average person sometimes can get a little caught up, and they're like, oh, but I need to optimize like all these really sort of obscure things. And then I'm like, well, how, are you getting any sunlight in the day? And they're like, no, I don't really go outside, So it's just a way to try to get people to think about this in a very holistic way. And that's why, last year we sort of had two main themes. It was like body and mind. And then this year my goal was to really sit down and refine that a little bit more.
So who are some of your guests?
Oh my goodness. We have so many amazing guests, and I'm probably going to forget some of them, but on our mindset day, I've got one of my personal coaches, Allegra Stein. She's actually the very first talk. She's somebody I found again by complete chance, and she's changed my life. She was with me when I first wanted to leave my teaching job, and I was super scared and just could not I stood at the edge, but just couldn't jump. She's amazing. Molly Galbraith of Girls Gone Strong, and that community, Emily Schramm, who's an NTP in the CrossFit world. Dr. Anna Kabeka is speaking about menopause. We have Dr. Jolene Brighton talking about post-birth control syndrome and what to do if you're a woman who wants to get off birth control and how do you do that safely. Jill Coleman, Nagar Fanuni, Melody Forbes. Dr. Alessandra Wall, this year she's talking about how to talk to teen girls.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's a topic we didn't have last year. And I sat back and I looked at it and I thought, oh my gosh, we have not talked about teens at all. And that's a really tricky one.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
so,
man. Yeah.
Yeah. Kat, speaking on the nutrition day, a girl who's amazing, Annie Miller, she's talking about how to lift weights if you haven't done it before, especially if you're worried about getting bulky. Pilar Gerasimo of Experience Life magazine. Just so many. Kate Galliott's talking about movement. Juliette Starrett talking about standing and incorporating more low-key movement into the day. So a mobility WOD, those folks there. Just so many incredible women.
Yeah, I know my girlfriend's super excited to start learning. So this is going to be like a rapid fire session. Another okay. Allison Crystal suggestion.
She's great, by the way.
Yeah, she's awesome.
She's amazing.
Yeah. First, I asked Rob Wolf this, and I want your perspective on this. Why do you think this movement attracts so many entrepreneurs?
Oh, that's a good question. I think in a lot of ways it's because there are so many. It's like biology, right?
Yeah.
If you have an empty island and you introduce some animals to that island, they're eventually going to niche down and sort of occupy these niches that are previously left empty. And I think paleo is a very emerging market in a lot of ways. It's starting to get a foothold more in the mainstream, and so I think that's attracting more people who are looking to bring their sort of unique skill set and possible infusion of capital into the mix. But it's really because it's a more open industry, I think, than or market than a lot of the other sort of diet and fitness. If we're talking about vegetarianism or we're talking about CrossFit, some of those are really, really saturated, but I feel like there's still growth to be had in the paleo community.
Yeah, well, okay. And for all our entrepreneurs listening out there, let's say you have that fire, and I talk about how naturopathic medicine found me, and I have a lot of risk tolerance, very risky profession, but with high reward. You had a very stable position and you took the risk. I wonder, you look like you were very satisfied with your outcomes. So the reward was great. Okay. So all the people that are staring down the cliff okay? How do they start? What motivational speech would you give them to jump off that cliff?
Yeah, so I recently saw this video where it was filmed in Europe somewhere. Maybe it was like Sweden or something, but they went to a pool where they had a 10-meter diving board or diving platform. It's not really a diving board at that point. It's just a big slab of concrete. And they set up a camera and a audio and a video camera to film people's reactions as they got to the edge. And these were not divers. These were not people who were trained in this. These were just regular people who they asked to go up and jump. So they filmed people's reactions as they did this. And as you can imagine, the people who stood there and either they had them go up sometimes in pairs, the more they talked to themselves or the other person, the more scared they got. And a lot of them ended up going back down. And I think that's an important metaphor because when you're standing at the edge of something that's super scary, and I did this too, and so I can completely relate. And the more you talk to yourself about it, and I know a lot of us put it under the guise of, well, I'm just doing my analysis. I'm just getting the pros and cons. I'm just doing my research. The more analysis and research and self-talk you have about that thing, a lot of times you'll talk yourself out of it, even if it's what you really want. And so I think gut feeling is a lot more telling than the rational brain, right? The part of the brain that has language and can sort of like, you got to justify yourself, you've got to talk yourself out of it or into it. This happened to me recently. We were in the airport in New Zealand and we were waiting to catch a flight back to the States. And one of my inspirations and heroes, Simon Sinek, walked into the terminal to get on our plane. And my husband and I sat there, and Simon's work's been extremely influential for me, especially in the last year and a half around purpose. And I sat there and I kind of had one of those,
shit.
Oh no. Oh, I so want to go say hi, but what if and I had this conversation. I was standing at the edge of the high platform, the edge of the cliff. I wanted to go say hi, but I was afraid I was going to mess it up. And the more I talked, the more reluctant and the more scared I got. And finally, my husband just pushed me in the back and sent me on my way. And I talked to him and it was wonderful. The point is, when you face those really super scary situations, and I'm not saying if you've wanted to quit your job, then you're going to walk into your boss tomorrow and like flip your desk over and tell him to screw off and you're just going to go quit. Most people aren't going to do that. But if you really want to do that thing, do something about it. It doesn't have to mean you're going to quit tomorrow, but what if you talk to your friend who had a similar situation and you get some advice? Or you sign up for a class online that's going to help you build your credentials so you can change your career. It's all of these sort of smaller actions. And if that's too scary, take an even smaller one. My coach, Allegra, calls it micro action. So what kind of micro action can you take? And when we take action in the face of fear, that's when we build confidence. And it's really interesting. I did a talk about this recently. Everybody knows the old sort of like, well, or they say, when I feel happy, then I'll do this. When I feel confident, I'll do that thing.
When I'm ready, I'll start paleo.
When I'm ready, I'll do it.
Yeah.
When I'm happy, I'll do this thing. And we all know from personal life experience that if we do the thing, sometimes the feeling comes afterwards. And if we wait until we're fearless or 100% confident or it's 100% the right time or we're feeling super motivated, we may never actually do the thing because we're waiting for the feeling when the feeling can be generated by the actual doing of the thing. And so I like to remind people that it's a cycle. It doesn't just go one unidirectional, right? It's both. And so I think that's really important. A lot of people don't feel confident. They don't have the courage. But I'll tell you what, I'm not a fearless person. When I asked my principal, because I had to ask for permission to ask for a leave of absence. When I asked for permission to ask for leave of absence, I was probably sweating buckets. When I had to actually mail in my letter that said for sure I was quitting the following year, I hesitated I literally had the mailbox open and I had the letter. It was one of those big blue mailboxes, USPS. And I had the letter and I was like, so I didn't want to let it go. I was so scared. But it's taking action in spite of fear and having that experience that then builds the feeling of like, okay, I did it, didn't die.
Yeah.
It turned out okay. I'm going to survive. I'm going to live through this. That is what helps to breed those feelings, that empowerment, that confidence, that motivation. And so I would just say, figure out what action you can take it's not quite as scary as the idea of just making the entire leap and jumping off the edge. Having people in your life who are willing to, literally like my husband did, literally push me in the back, or figuratively push you just a little bit more, can be very helpful as well, because then you know that you're not doing it by yourself. But I think taking that action, breaking it down into even tinier and tinier little chunks is, for most people, where they're going to be comfortable. There's the fine line between like I'm scared and I'm so terrified and stressed out that my life grinds to a halt. There's two different things.
And it goes back to the community and tribe, because you can have two types of people that are going to push you. The cynical people that want to see you fail, and they'll push you into a bad situation. And the people that love you, that will push you because they know you're ready. And we need to make sure that we're in touch with our community and our tribe to make sure that we eliminate all those cynical people in your life. Get rid of them and surround yourself with people that love you.
Absolutely. I was going to say, speaking of Simon Sinek, I saw him talk recently in San Diego here, and he said something that sort of resonated with me in my own purpose, which is a good coach or a good leader is one who's going to believe in you when you don't quite believe in yourself. And I think that those are the kinds of people that we need in our lives.
Exactly. That's exactly. Okay. The hardest thing for me, it took me, I started Paleo in 2008, 2009. It took me around a year for me to completely eliminate soda from my life. It was the hard, and you talk about peanuts and or M&Ms and Coke. Okay, two questions. Do you have a sweet tooth? And second, how did you get rid of soda? And I'm just trying to give actionable things to the people that are listening,
I think, first of all, like getting rid of soda, I just went completely cold turkey and just stopped drinking it. But there are lots of substitutes, there's sparkling water, there's kombucha. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff to give you the
fizziness.
Yeah. Flat soda tastes terrible, right? So what is it about soda that's so alluring? Obviously the sugar, but if you take the bubbles away, it's like, it's not quite as exciting. So anything that creates the bubbly situations, mineral water, the same thing, can be helpful for people. And do I have a sweet tooth? I had a really, 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 really bad sweet tooth. Really, really bad. I had to do a couple of elimination diets and sort of like, get rid of it 100% before I felt like I can live without it. So I enjoy, we're not a sugar-free household. I have a beehive outside my house. Like I'm going to eat that honey when it comes out, a little bit. But to me, my sweet tooth is very, very much diminished and very much under control compared to what it used to be. It used to be really bad.
And then finally, how can people sign up for your summit, and where can they find you, and social media and all your handles and all of that interwebs magic that you're doing?
Yeah, so for the summit, you can go to womensstrengthsummit.com, and there are a bunch of sort of coral colored buttons. You can click any of those buttons and get a free ticket to the event. So it's happening May 15th through the 21st, but you can sign up already and get a ticket. And for other stuff, for coaching and all of the other things I like to rant about online, you can find that at stupideasypaleo.com, and basically anywhere on social media where you can type in Stupid Easy Paleo, I'm probably there.
So the Pinterest and the FaceSpace and
yeah. Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube, Snapchat, although I don't really Snapchat anymore. So Twitter.
Do you have a Musical.ly account?
No, I don't even know what that is.
Well, Chris Masterjohn makes fun of me every time I mention social media. He asks me, have you created your Musical.ly account?
Oh, okay. See, I'm already out of touch, Guillermo.
We are so out of touch. It's so insane. Yeah. So, thank you so much. Thank you for opening up. It's been such an amazing conversation. And maybe, we can loop around in a couple of months, 6 months, and maybe you, Allison, and a couple of badass females can take over my podcast, and I won't listen. And maybe we can just change the tone and really try to focus on this part of the paleo community that sometimes goes underrepresented.
Absolutely. Well, I'm hanging out with her in New Zealand in October, so I'm sure we'll formulate a plan then.
That would be fantastic. Okay, thank you so
Yeah.
much, and I'll talk to you soon, okay?
Thank you.